The world was made as an attack on God. And what we do when we believe we were capable of attacking God and we did attack God is we feel guilt that is intolerable and unimaginable. And so we try to get rid of it through projection, repression, the psychological tools we utilize to push the guilt out of our awareness. We need another to project the guilt onto. So we people our world, our dream, with other bodies. And they serve that purpose, to be the symbol that we can project, blame, judge, to get rid of the guilt. But it doesn't work, and we still feel fear, pain, and guilt ourselves. The first thing I said was the world was made as an attack on God. That is leading into a discussion about a section in the course called The Only Purpose. The first line of The Only Purpose on page 635 is the real world is the state of mind in which the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. Fear is not its goal, for the escape from guilt becomes its aim. The value of forgiveness is perceived and takes the place of idol, which are sought no longer for their, quote, gifts are not held dear. The real world is a state of mind. The world we seem to live in is a state of mind. The ego teaches that the world was made as an attack on God. That is the underlying foundation within which the thread of fear runs through that world. The projection of the ego's thought system, which teaches you killed God, you attacked oneness, you destroyed heaven, and now you have to be afraid because you're guilty and there's punishment coming. So we have fear of the future, pain in the present, and guilt. Changing the purpose of the world is up to us. So while it was made as an attack, we can choose to see another purpose there. That's actually the scope of our choice, to see the ego thought system and its purpose, or to see the Holy Spirit's thought system and its purpose. The real world is the state of mind in which the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. Forgiveness is our only function here. So adapting our function changes our state of mind. We're no longer looking for the evidence to prove the ego thought system is true, the only reality. God is dead, but he's rising to come after us, and somebody has to be guilty. Just like the body was made as a limitation on love, you can actually substitute some of the words in the course and maintain its integrity and message. The world was made as an attack on God. You could also say the body was made as an attack on God. The ego was made as an attack on God. The self I made to be me is an attack on God. They're all limitations on love. We use them to demonstrate the separation happened. Now, by adopting another purpose, the only purpose, we use them to demonstrate the separation never happened. So we don't deny the experience. I don't deny what my senses seem to report to me in the world, but I do deny the cause of my experience is not outside of me. I can say, I saw that person say something terrible or physically harm another person or me. Let's apply it to myself. And the pain that the words or the physical assault seems to produce, me as practicing the course and practicing forgiveness can deny the cause was that thing outside me. I can perceive even here that the cause is a willingness to be separate, a willingness to believe the separation happened and there is no way to resolve it. And that willingness to maintain the dirge to death is the only thing holding the world together. The only purpose goes on to say, no rules are idly set, and no demands are made of anyone or anything to twist and fit into the dream of fear. Instead, there is a wish to understand all things created as they really are, and it is recognized that all things must be first forgiven and then understood. And forgiveness overlooks what never happened, which is to say, I do not look upon the world as cause. When I join with the Holy Spirit and I perceive that I have adopted the ego thought system, I can say, that is not the cause of my pain. The cause of my pain is I took the tiny mad idea seriously, and taking that seriously and my embracing of the idea of separation, I have to thereafter embrace everything that follows. And it all follows until I choose again, till I choose to see another purpose here. It is thought that understanding is acquired by attack here in this world. There, in the real world, it is clear that by attack is understanding lost. Because we really can't make any progress unless we're willing to deny the denial of truth. The way we do that is to deny that something outside of me can hurt me and dictate my experience and create in me an experience that wasn't there, as though I didn't feel any pain until something outside of me acted upon me. I didn't feel fear until something outside of me acted upon me. Fear, pain, and guilt are the fabric of the dream. I came here and born into this world with all of them fully formed, waiting to point at an antagonist outside of me to blame for that experience so that I will not wake up. It is a wish to remain asleep. And we all have that wish because we're all here. We all seem to be here. The folly of pursuing guilt as goal is fully recognized, and idols are not wanted there, for guilt is understood as the sole cause of pain in any form. Idols are not wanted in the real world because you can't reach the real world when you are clinging to idols. An idol, and what is an idol? An idol is any substitute for the Christ in you, any substitute for reality, an image that you value more than reality itself. That's what an idol is. And just like the ego, idols are nowhere and nothing because they're images. Images are symbols. They mean nothing until you endow them with meaning. And when you're able to see, I have given everything all the meaning it can have for me. When we're able to see that, then they lose the power. They lose the seeming power over us because they never really had any power. It's not that we haven't experienced pain. It's not that the pain is not real. It's just the cause. This is a course on cause and effect. And purpose will dictate what we experience. No one is tempted by its vain appeal, the vain appeal of guilt. For suffering and death have been perceived as things not wanted and not striven for. Ken used to say, accept no compromise in which duality plays a part, which is a play on the Course's statement, accept no compromise in which death plays a part. The possibility of freedom has been grasped and welcomed, and the means by which it can be gained can now be understood. The world becomes a place of hope because its only purpose is to be a place where hope of happiness can be fulfilled. No one stands outside this hope because the world has been united in belief the purpose of the world is one which all must share if hope be more than just a dream. The idea of separate interests is a defense against truth. It is designed to maintain the belief that the separation happened and now there are differences. There are different experiences. There are people who have and there are people who have not. There are people who are good and there are people who are bad. And we believe we can trust our own judgments about that. And when we're proven wrong, we go in another direction. But maintaining those differences doesn't happen because of what our senses perceive. Maintaining those differences is essential to keep the dream alive. Our senses don't perceive anything. We have sightless holes for eyes. Our senses do nothing because nothing happens here. It's all happening at the level of the mind. And it's essential for us to recognize that, because as long as we believe something's happening here, our judgments about differences are going to seem reasonable and rational. And they do, because I can say this right now, and in the next moment, I can go down the path of judgment and go down the path of differences. So every moment that I can take Jesus's hand, observe the shadows, including the shadow I identify with, and watch myself and the other shadows, engaging in our egos, because that's all we can do here. There's no such thing as a holy ego. There's no such thing as an ego filled with light. All of it is illusory. So everything in the world is defense against the truth. But the point I was trying to make was that seeing the differences is not because of what we perceive. The differences are maintained because we need them to be maintained in our mind in order to believe that we succeeded. We succeeded in leaving heaven, and that we are what we want to believe we are. We see it because we believe it, and we believe it because we want it to be true. That is perception's law. So, like I said, everything in the world is a defense against the truth. It's an attempt to make the error real. Just like we don't fix the dream, another dictate would be, because nothing happens in the dream. There's nothing to fix here. And we can't fix it because the script is established. We can just look upon it with our ego, or we can look upon it with Jesus. When we look upon it with Jesus, we're basically watching the ego thought system and seeing it for what it is, and how it doesn't offer us anything that we could ever want. It only offers despair, nothingness, a sense of doom and failure. At best, the ego can experience moments when it's temporarily less predatory. So getting back to the attempt to make error real. So that's what all of our actions, or I shouldn't say that, I would say all of our efforts are designed to make the error real, to preserve the dream. Dreams are wish fulfillment. So magic is what we use. The word magic is what we use to describe anything that attempts to solve things in this world, or attempts to fix the dream. It can only be magic because the problem isn't in the image, the shadow figure, the dream figure, the illusion, the hallucination. The problem isn't there. The problem is in the mind that thinks it's there, but doesn't just think it, wants it to be there. And Jesus is trying to get us to question that desire, because it is not enough to just understand the Course and try to apply its principles and feel a little bit better while we experience ourselves as bodies. That is not enough. We need to reach the deepest levels to reach the real world. Going back to the section on purpose. Not yet is heaven quite remembered. For the purpose of forgiveness still remains. Yet everyone is certain he will go beyond forgiveness, and he but remains until it is made perfect in himself. He has no wish for anything but this, and fear has dropped away because he is united in his purpose with himself. There is a hope of happiness in him so sure and constant, he can barely stay and wait a little longer, with his feet still touching earth. Yet is he glad to wait till every hand is joined and every heart made ready to arise and go with him, for thus is he made ready for the step in which all forgiveness left behind. Okay, he clearly talks in that paragraph as though there are others. Yet is he glad to wait till every hand is joined. The important thing to remember is that while the Course can seem contradictory, they are not there. It specifically says the others are not there, and there is no world. So how can he also talk about joining hands with dream figures? There's a couple of different ways to address those contradictions. So one is Jesus meets us where we are. And if we're not ready to move beyond one rung on the ladder, where we continue to experience a need that I would say is undefinable, but we want to see others, then we'll read the book as reinforcing the idea that the others are there. If we see in reinforcing that idea that the others are there, that we cannot get comfortable with that understanding, that understanding will not get us where we want to go, because we will be trapped here and still wrapped up in the loop of justifying anger and hatred. Because as long as there are others, we will all be doing that. So if you perceive others as being separate egos, you will be fearful, you will get angry, they will do things that you don't like, and you'll believe they're the cause of something inside of you. And whether it's happiness or sadness doesn't matter. Seeing the cause of your experience outside of you is terrifying. That is the terror. Because if the cause of your experience is outside of you, you are at the mercy of forces beyond your control. So the other way to see these passages is to say it's a poetic license, because there appears to be dream figures, right? And so when you talk about joining with them, you don't join. Nothing happens in the world, and that can't be repeated frequently enough. Nothing happens at the level of the world. It happens at the level of the mind. We believe we experience things here, but the body's in the mind. The mind is not in the body. So when we're willing to withdraw the life we imbued the dream with, of all the things outside of us, all the people outside of us, then we are free. We're freeing ourselves, not just from judging them and perceiving them as cause, but we're doing the same thing with ourselves, in the sense that what I believe my body is can now become like the world. Its original purpose was to prove the error is real, but I'm going to see a different purpose in it. I'm going to see the body as a communication device, and I'm going to use it to awaken from the dream rather than to reinforce and maintain the dream and perpetuate it. So I don't know if that was really clear on there not being others. So I'm going to just back up a little bit and talk about that some more. At the top of the ladder, that we follow Jesus up, we would see that nothing here is worth preserving. And that has to include A Course in Miracles. It is literally a part of what we're trying to escape from. There's nothing to escape from, because you don't have to escape illusions. When the mind accepts truth, recognizes it, realizes it, awakens, then illusion just disappears. Where illusion was, now truth is. Illusion doesn't take the place of truth. It just pushes it out of mind or out of awareness. And when it's brought back into awareness, there's no place for illusion to go. It just disappears. Well, if you're not ready to perceive yourself there and withdraw all projections, then you'll see value in the idea that bodies join. But that is not the end game. What happens between figures in a dream, what happens between shadows, will never matter. The final step is God's, because it is but God who would create a perfect son and share his fatherhood with him. No one outside of heaven knows how this can be, for understanding this is heaven itself. Even the real world has a purpose still beneath creation and eternity. But fear is gone because its purpose is forgiveness, not idolatry. And so is God's Son prepared to be himself and to remember that the Son of God knows everything his Father understands and understands it perfectly with him. Our part is to do exactly what he says. That's really it. We change the purpose. How do we change the purpose of the world? How do we change the purpose of the body? Through our function, which is forgiveness. We practice forgiveness as Jesus describes it. The real world can be thought of as a state of mind which is akin to lucid dreaming, where it is fully understood that that the illusion cannot interrupt truth, that it has no power. The idea of separation has no power, that we gave it that power. When we withdraw that and the truth dawns on our mind, then we can move about in this world being the reflection of the Holy Spirit, being the reflection of heaven. But that still falls short. It's still because its perception still lasts, and God will take the final step. Thus is the real world's purpose gently brought into awareness to replace the goal of sin and guilt, and all that stood between your image of yourself and what you are. Forgiveness washes joyfully away. What stood between your image of yourself and what you really are. Forgiveness washes joyfully away. That is the tiny gap he's talked about in other places. That it's just a gap within which we try to write the truth. What we write is the separation happened. The error is real. When we do that, when we establish the truth for ourselves, we are not allowing truth to come in and reveal itself. Forgiveness is what washes it joyfully away. Yet God need not create his Son again, that what is his be given back to him. The gap between your brother and yourself was never there. And what the Son of God knew in creation, he must know again. In oneness, there's no such thing as a boundary. There's no such thing as a space between two different things, because there are no different things. Everything is made up of the same substance. That is true right now. We don't have to find a place or be recreated by God. What is true right now. The only question is, why are we not aware of it? And that's what he is explaining. Why we are not aware of it, because we have chosen to believe in error. And that error has to be undone before peace of mind can be returned to us. When brothers join in purpose in the world of fear, they stand already at the edge of the real world. The way that I would emphasize, nothing happens here, even though he's talking about brothers joining in the purpose in the world of fear, they stand at the edge of the real world. That is poetic license. He's already made the point. There's illusion and truth. There is heaven. The illusion is hell. Heaven is truth. There cannot be the necessity of two bodies to join, because it would be the joining of two nothings. So then he says, perhaps they still look back and think they see an idol that they want. Yet has their path been surely set away from idols toward reality. For when they joined their hands, it was Christ's hand they took, and they will look on him whose hand they hold. The face of Christ is looked upon before the Father is remembered. For he must be unremembered till his Son has reached beyond forgiveness to the love of God. Yet is the love of Christ accepted first, and they will come, and then will come the knowledge they are one. Okay. That is, as it goes on to say, it's Christ's hand that you take. So what seems to happen here can be considered to be symbolic of doing that. But it is not a reflection of truth, because a reflection of truth is only an experience. Symbols are not reflections of truth. They can only point to truth if they are properly understood and properly interpreted. So I'm not going to read the whole section. I just wanted to make some points about the purpose of the world and, the meaning that we give it would kind of leave it without any meaning at all. So that's all I've got for right now. Maybe I'll come back to this. I am going to read one more paragraph. A part of one is, okay, I'm going to read two paragraphs. An ancient hate is passing from the world, and with it goes all hatred and all fear. Look back no longer, for what lies ahead is all you ever wanted in your heart. Give up the world, but not to sacrifice. You never wanted it. What happiness have you sought here that did not bring you pain? What moment of content has not been bought at fearful price in coins of suffering? Joy has no cost. It is your sacred right, and what you pay for is not happiness. Be speeded on your way by honesty, and let not your experiences here deceive in retrospect. They were not free from bitter cost and joyless consequence. When an idol tempts you, think of this. There never was a time an idol brought you anything except the gift of guilt. Not one was bought except at cost of pain, nor was it ever paid by you alone. Give up the world. That is the message. And the central message is there is no world. Jesus is always doing those kinds of funny things in here where he says, give up the world, but there isn't any world to give up. And then, it reminds me of you need do nothing, but you can't do anything either. So I think he does that over and over. It's a dream of judgment. Don't judge. You really can't judge. It's like a little whisper that comes after that because the indirect approach is always best to make you believe you actually have a choice. But here, while you identify with the ego thought system, while I identify with the ego thought system, we don't have choice. We don't have a choice here. We're playing out the expression of the idea of separation as though it were real and meaningful and happening right now and capable of injuring us. Where death is real, we walk in the agony, in the garden of agony and death, and we see the shifting tiny gleams that spark an instant from the fireflies of sin and throw each other over precipices. So this is not a nice place. And it's so important to realize it's not a nice place. There's nothing to preserve here. So I think that seems really harsh to a non-course student, but to a course student, it's like a beautiful song. It's a melody you've longed to hear because something inside of us knows it's rotten in Denmark, but we put it by in games we play to occupy our time, and we engage in repression, regression, denial, projection. All of those psychological defense mechanisms are at play here in the dream because you really have to be playing a game to believe that something here is worth holding on to or can be held on to. It is a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice, but all its roads lead to disappointment, nothingness, and death. It's a very bitter pill. So to hear him say, give up the world, but not to sacrifice, you never wanted it, is a recognition of what's really happening here. And this course is about taking the blinders off. You're born here through pain and in pain. You learn of suffering, loss, and sacrifice. Yeah. The idea that there's something to love here is such an absurdity when you are hearing Jesus describe this world, describe the ego, describe special relationships, describe what you seem to be and I seem to be. It's not a pretty picture. Those rubies and diamonds are tears and blood. Fear is like the only reality here. Safety has literally no meaning in our world. So we give up the world to experience the real world. The real world looks nothing like the world we seem to live in. The world that we seem to live in is not home to us, and somewhere in our minds, we know that it's true. When we read the Course, we hear the melody again, and it can comfort us, but it doesn't end there. There are always deeper levels to go until we experience ourselves as the pure reflection of the Holy Spirit thought system. So we don't stop. We can't stop until we reach the deepest levels. Because once our way's been decided, there is no stopping. We have set in motion what is going to precede our awakening. Now, you could say that's part of the script, but that's just something I happen to believe. That part of the script is first, so that you awaken without terror, a context within which to put the experiences you're going to have. And those experiences will prove that Jesus is right and Jesus is leading you where you do want to be. Because all of us long to go home deep down inside of us. It is past the face of innocence. It is past the belief we're the home of evil, darkness, and sin. It is past the terror of the fear of God. It is past that circle of sheer terror. Beyond that is the burning love we have for God. Jesus is trying to teach us there's nothing to be afraid of, because what you believe can hurt you can't hurt you and is literally not hurting you. You are only being hurt by your own denial of truth, by your own self-betrayal. And today, we try again. We take Jesus' hand and we look with him upon what we made. And that includes what we made of ourselves, what we made of other people. Not to judge it, but to recognize we don't want that anymore. And to be more and more willing to let him lead us home. So we go from being a child to an adult to a spirit. And then we see we've always been at home in God. And nothing and no one can ever change that. We're safe at home dreaming of exile. The will of God is our will. I'd like to say a prayer, but I am remarkably, consistently unprepared for a closing prayer. So I'm going to take a moment and come up with a prayer that is suitable for this discussion.